Hello and welcome to the Blood Reds Morning Bulletin. I'm joined by our Liverpool.com editor, Matt Addison, to discuss a bit about Liverpool's summer transfer plans, potentially, but especially focusing on Aurelien Tchouameni and Jude Bellingham and which one would be the better fit for Liverpool. It's a tough choice, Matt, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think there's a bad option, to be honest. I think what the Echo has reported and what Ian Doyle looked into during this week is that Liverpool are not necessarily going to prioritise a midfielder this summer, but these two certainly are understandably on the radar. It's something that they might at some point choose to go and move for. So yeah, I think obviously Jude Bellingham is the only sort of drawback with him is that it's going to be a considerably higher transfer fee. I think that will come into it to a certain extent, but obviously with Tchouameni, we don't know exactly how much that's going to be. The kind of suggestion in France seems to be that sort of 50 million euros, around sort of 42, 43 million, that might be about right. But then I'm sure Liverpool will be wary that Real Madrid, supposedly very keen as well, probably one or two other teams will take a look at him. So yeah, it's... yeah, like I say, there's no kind of bad option out of the two of them, but I think Tchouameni probably will end up costing a little bit less. Whether that's something that Liverpool think about, I don't know. But yeah, either way, if they do get one of these players, whether it's this summer or probably more likely the summer afterwards, I think Liverpool fans would have no complaints.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that Liverpool aren't necessarily looking for a midfielder this summer, but obviously that was the case in January. They weren't really looking for an attacker, but then Tottenham came in for Luis Diaz, and Liverpool's plans sort of accelerated and changed. But Tchouameni, it seems like this is kind of the end of his time at Monaco, and there is, other than Real Madrid, there's interest, I think, reportedly from Manchester United as well, and a few other clubs. So it feels like if Liverpool are keen on him, it would have to be this summer, surely.
Yeah, it does feel a bit like that, doesn't it? The Luis Diaz comparison, I think, is spot on. I think it could be one of those that if Liverpool and Julian Ward decide that he is the one that they definitely want to go for, that they think he is the perfect option for them long term, they might be forced into it this summer, whether they want to or not. I think the only thing that kind of makes you wonder whether that will happen is possibly kind of if James Milner's offered a new contract, which I imagine it'll kind of be left up to him whether he wants to stay or not. You've still got Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain under contract until 2023, so obviously he could move away, but there's no guarantee that will happen. It could quite easily be the case that he is still at Liverpool next season. They do have, obviously, Fabio Carvalho, who's going to sign in the summer as well, who we expect probably is going to play midfield. I know he can play a little bit further forward as well, but it's not as if there's a lack of options in the front three either. So there are going to be a lot of midfielders for Liverpool. It might seem more likely that one or two of those, I would imagine that Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain might not get a new contract, for example. So that possibly could mean that both him and Milner won't be there by 2023. Then maybe you could kind of make a bit more of a case for it the following summer. But yeah, it'd be interesting if Real Madrid are really serious about it and Tchouameni kind of makes it clear that he would actually prefer to move to Liverpool. Obviously, that can change things, but I think we've always thought that they probably would go for a midfielder in the summer. But the kind of the reporting this week suggests it might be the summer afterwards, and I can kind of see the logic behind that.
I mean, especially when reportedly or supposedly Jude Bellingham will be available the next summer, because we're talking about Tchouameni and is supremely talented, but Jude Bellingham just seems like on another level. He's been a regular at Birmingham since he was 16, scoring goals in the Championship, and he's already played at the Euros. He's a key member of the England squad. Has loads of two seasons almost of Champions League football under his belt now, and European football, and it just feels like if Liverpool are going to get a midfielder, he'd be the perfect choice.
Yeah, I think so. I think for a variety of reasons, I think the experience thing is really interesting. We tend to see Liverpool go for players that are kind of 4 or 5 years older than him, really. When you look at the players who've come in, obviously Tchouameni is think 3 or 4 years older than him. You look at when they've signed the likes of Mane and Salah to begin with, but then more similarly now, you look at Luis Diaz is that little bit older. I think Diogo Jota was 23 when they signed him. There is kind of, a tendency to wait a little bit longer, but I don't think that's an age thing. I do think that's an experience thing. It was a case of they really liked Diogo Jota, but how was he going to get on in the Premier League, give him a couple of seasons to play in England and adjust, and then move to Liverpool after that. So Jude Bellingham is obviously still only a teenager. He's still only very, very young, but at the same time, he does have that experience. He's got a couple of seasons in the Bundesliga, the Champions League. He's always impressed for them. Obviously, with England, we expect his role to increase. Wouldn't massively surprise you if he played a big role at the World Cup in December, which, again, could just make that price tag go that little bit higher. I think there is an argument to say that you get it done before the World Cup to make sure that doesn't happen. But I think if Erling Haaland goes in the summer, they're probably not going to want to sell both of their key men, kind of their two leaders, really, even though they're so young. They've been sort of talismanic, really, for Dortmund this season, in a difficult season as well for them. So, yeah, I can see the logic. I think Jude Bellingham would be the one for me that I would look at. But, as much as you can kind of see him in a Liverpool shirt, you kind of see the appeal from him to come to Anfield. It's going to take a lot of money, I think, and possibly if you wait until 2023, there might be an extra 20 or 30 million on top of that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is the biggest obstacle, isn't it, in terms of the financial aspect of the deal. Everything else, the footballing aspect, it makes sense for Liverpool. But I was wondering, do you think it's possible that we see a sort of Naby Keita type deal done this summer? It seems like you mentioned the World Cup, and potentially Dortmund will have a better season. Maybe Bellingham will show himself more at Dortmund. Potentially, I think that could be something Liverpool look at, maybe.
Yeah, it's something we've seen them do before, isn't it? It wouldn't be a massive surprise if that was the case. I think it would be one of those where the player would have to be absolutely convinced that Liverpool was the right player for him, and he was prepared to wait and be patient for that, which, I can't foresee that wouldn't, necessarily happen. That is something that would be realistic. I think the big thing as well, really, for Jude Bellingham that sort of tips me more towards him than Tchouameni is the fact that he's English as well. I know people kind of mention that a lot and kind of wonder why we speak about that, but it is obviously a requirement to have a certain number of homegrown players within your squad. Obviously, we look at someone like Milner and Oxlade-Chamberlain. We've mentioned that they will leave. Obviously, that's two more. Nico Williams, obviously being from Wales, he is one of those as well. So I think there's definitely a need at some point to look at that kind of thing as well in the future. So, yeah, Jude Bellingham, if you can get him, obviously would cost a lot of money, but he'd take that box as well. He's obviously a player that you could see playing at the top level for 12, 15 years to come. So yeah, if Liverpool did decide that he was the one, Jude Bellingham decided that Liverpool was the team that he wanted to go to, and Liverpool were able to put together that financial package, yeah, I wouldn't rule it out completely that it could happen, and possibly the way around the World Cup situation could be to sort it out this summer. But yeah, I think there's a long way to go on anything like that. That is just purely speculation for the time being.
Yeah. And since, as we're talking about two young midfielders, there's obviously two very talented young midfielders at Liverpool in Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott. I wonder how do you think their futures will be affected by another young sort of midfielder coming in?
Yeah, it's been a frustrating season for both of them, hasn't it, this year? It's not been an easy one for Harvey Elliott with obviously his injury, and I think since coming back he hasn't played a great deal, probably just because Liverpool are being very careful with him for one, but also the fact that they've got all of the other options that they've got within there. They obviously at the moment need to win pretty much every single game. They need to play the strongest possible 11, and obviously, understandably, for a player of that age, he's not quite in that just yet. Obviously, we've seen him play in big games, Chelsea, for example, at Anfield earlier in the season. I think there will be there's a big role and a big opportunity for him, I think, moving forwards. And for Curtis Jones as well, every time he's come in and done well, he seems to have got an injury or an illness or something that stopped him from kicking on from that. But again, I think next season, I wouldn't imagine that either of them will go out on loan, to be honest. I think they'll both kind of be in that Liverpool squad. They'll continue to play those minutes. And, I suppose it depends slightly on who's still at the club next summer. But if Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain was to leave, for example, which personally I would suggest is probably the right thing for him and for the club at this moment in time, I think you could then see Harvey Elliott maybe taking on a few more minutes there. If James Milner was to leave, again, we don't know whether that's the case or not at the moment, but if he was, could Curtis Jones then take a few of his minutes? I think it's going to be a slow and gradual process, really, for both of them to increase their minutes. But, I think Curtis Jones in particular this season, if he hadn't have been injured and he hadn't have had that frustration, injured, even the first weekend of the season, he missed out, didn't he, because of injury. If he'd have been fit, he would have played a lot more minutes, even if it's, Carabao Cup, FA Cup, those sorts of games, the odd Premier League game here and there. I think there will be a big opportunity for both of them next season, as long as they stay fit. And obviously, you'd imagine Fabio Carvalho coming in will want to do the same, but I think both of them are certainly more integrated into the Liverpool system. They're certainly more kind of match ready to play for Jurgen Klopp. So, as Fabio Carvalho comes in, both of them, it's a little bit of extra competition. It's a little bit of an extra bit of motivation to get themselves in the team. But I think certainly on day one of pre-season, things can change very quickly. But on day one, I think Fabio Carvalho would be probably behind both of them in the pecking order.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think it's easy to forget how young both of them are. Jones is still only 21 and Elliott is 19. So there's still loads and probably a decade to come of their careers. Thanks, Matt, for joining me. Thanks, everyone, for listening in. Make sure to check out the rest of the Blood Red content going out today and all the recent content on liverpool.com. Thank you.